Tony Greer is an intentional investor, out now, Epsilon Theory YouTube. We talk about teamwork and how teams work, from his childhood home, his fraternity brothers, to his family today. We talk about trading for skills, for experience, for money across all aspects of life. And we talk about how to not become, I guess, a middle guy, like a rent seeker. And this is all about the TG macro property that he's building up today. It's really cool where this starts and where this ends. Jack Forehand, let's roll some clips.
I always notice whenever there's a major thing happens in your life or whatever, somebody asks you for a favor, something major happens where you need a contact, I'm going right into that network head first. Hey, help me. Right? And next thing you know, you're a phone call away from whatever solution you were looking for. So he would test me on the desk and embarrass me with something that I didn't know. He'd be like, what's our physical goal position right now? And I would be like, what do you mean? And he'd be like, how do you not know what our physical goal position? We're sitting here winging around thousands of contracts of futures, millions of ounces. How could you not know what our cash position is? And you're like, he's telling me something. He's sending me a signal. So I better know every day, every minute what the goddamn, like that's what that's what the message I got was. Become familiar with that, know what that is. Then I knew what our arb position was. Then you become a useful right-hand man, right? If this becomes your science for the boss, get more and more responsibility. And so while he would berate me during the day and crush me, it was always with good intention. And then he would be like, at the end of the day, he would say, come on, we're going to Gotham for dinner. They hired all the bankers, let all the sales traders go. We went from having a ridiculous commission deal, making a lot of money, and they're coming to you saying, we'll pay you $100,000 plus salary. And you're like, the fuck out of here. So it's come a really long way, Matt. You know what I mean? And now I finally do have a real functioning entity that I'm really proud to say, requires all of my attention. And now I've got the freedom on top of it, so you can't get the smile off my face.
Welcome to The Intentional Investor with Matt Zeigler, where he and his guests explore the intersection of investing and life, portfolio and purpose. Nothing in this podcast is investment advice. Nothing in this podcast is advising you to buy or sell any security or to do anything with your money. Seriously, you should only act on investment advice from someone you know and who knows your unique situation. We are not that person. Matt Zeigler is a managing director at Sunpoint Investments, and the opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Sunpoint Investments or of Second Foundation Partners. Securities discussed in the podcast may be holdings of Sunpoint Investments.
You're watching The Intentional Investor right here on Epsilon Theory YouTube. This is the show where I take one of the smartest, most strategic thinkers I know, and we figure out what the world did to them to make them this way. But in a good way. In a good way. It's about figuring out what the intentions are that they're known for as the people they are in this world right now. So who's with me? I can only explain him with a very tortured Guns N' Roses analogy. So this is going to be how this goes down from the beginning here. He's less a Hollywood rose, more a daisy through concrete out of beautiful Long Island. But he did start off in full Axl mode professionally when he left New York to go tour Europe in the 90s. And that was, of course, before his much later Dahlman Rose era, which had more in common, I think, with Izzy Stradlin, where the name makes it sound sexier than it is, but we all have to sit back and play rhythm sometimes, right? So he really did go on this full tour version of Europe, and we're going to talk about it, because I heard he even went gold there, or at least he did with the Swiss bank, as in only to have them take a lot of gold P&L off of him on one occasion. And that kicks him back to the U.S. in due time for what I'll call his Duff era, in the late 90s, where he wasn't ready to be the front man, but he's ready to hold down that bass for a while. Until 2008, when he went full slash in front of the chapel mode. I could see the hat, the cigarette on the tip of his lip, trading puts like a low-slung Les Paul, turning 40K into 500 and back again, watching his PA balance get dropped like Steven Adler from Illusion. Too soon? Too soon? But like Slash, he's climbed back, launched his own thing, been crushing it online since COVID. Zero Chinese democracy moments. You know him for TG Macro, Macro Dirt, probably a snake pit, a revolver, and a conspirator in there somewhere too. Join me in welcoming him from the Billy Joel jungle of Long Island. It's Tony Greer.
Where do you get all this talent from? And how do I get my hands on it? You are too good at this, Matthew. How are you, man?
I'm here to have a good time with Tony Greer. Are you
You are
ready
a
for this?
genius. You are an unsung genius, man. I'm so glad we got to meet.
This is going to be a ball. I've got a million questions. There's a 2 million Easter eggs in that intro for anybody who wants to
Yeah.
go digging back through. But oh, and also the Axl Rose to Dahlman Rose flip. I'm
Just
unreasonably proud of that line.
just that way. I did never pull that together myself.
Well, good, because I am very much unreasonably proud of that. I need to pull at least two moments out of here before I take you all the way back in the DeLorean to the childhood.
Yeah.
This will not be as traumatic as life itself, I promise you. But I do have to hit these two moments. You go to Zurich and you're trading, and you get clocked by this. What was it, like a Swiss bank trade, like a gold trade at the end of a day?
Yeah.
What
That
Walk me
was
through. How old were you when this happened to you? When the world did you this lesson?
27, 26,
Oh
7 years
God.
old.
So you're
Yeah.
like peak. I know what I'm doing in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the story?
It was basically a question of a bank decided that they wanted to, basically take a large chunk of precious metals positioning, right? They wanted to get long gold and silver. And I had basically quoted this client because, time was always of the essence. You have a client, you have your salesperson stand up on the desk and say, hey, I need a price. I need a price for 5 million ounces of silver and 500,000 ounces of gold. And as the only person in charge of precious metals trading on the desk at the moment, I felt obligated to see what was in the market, spit out a price, and have them transact, oddly enough. And, I kind of read them the right way in terms of being a buyer. And they were actually a buyer around the markets. I got lifted, the market went higher. And then the salesman starts questioning and saying, are you even allowed to have a position this big? Because I was short all the silver and essentially most of the gold that I had sold this customer. I had a huge short position. The market was getting away from me. I was losing money by the tens of thousands every moment. And it was completely hairy, right? So you had to take a partner on the desk at the moment, somebody with a little bit more experience than I had, say, how are we going to manage this? The first thing we did was call management and say, we quoted the customer, here's our position, here's the P&L, this is our plan. And they were like, good luck. Sounds like a great plan. So you go about first trying to get the sweat from dripping off of your fingertips so that you can actually transact and make decisions. And it was really just managing my way out of a terrible loss, and it was one of those experiences that you never forget. It's one of those experiences that stays in your head every day when you say, okay, I got to live to trade another day here. And it was one of the things where, you kind of reported the whole incident to management, hoping that you weren't going to get fired on the spot, and wound up living through that. The managers understood that, providing liquidity was paramount importance. The bank looked like an upstanding, we did the right thing. And basically just worked our way out of it over the next day or two, lost a whole bunch of money, and basically got started from scratch. But I made it all back, which the beauty of it was that, when you have those situations, there's got to be like an upstairs phone call that takes place, right? From the liquidity provider to the customer. And so kind of after all the dust settles, you have a manager talk to a manager at the client and say, just so you know, like, we know you were playing dirty pool. You took 5 million ounces of silver off us. You were obviously around in the markets. You bought gold. You bought the whole thing. So there's got to be some kind of compensation for that. So over time, they provided a lot of flow that we were able to capitalize on and trade our way out of, and basically kind of chip away at the loss after, several weeks of trading. But we saw a lot of flow from that client. It was much more reasonable, and we were basically able to chip away at that disastrous scenario and put it to bed without too much of a divot on our hands. So
What's that do to you psychologically at 27? Because that's a heavy lesson in so many layers and levels there.
yeah, it's the physical stress is something that you had to, that hit you like a ton of bricks. It literally felt like you were in a plane going down. You know what I mean? Where somebody lifts you I made the price something like 5.25, 5.35 in a market that was probably like 25 cents, bid at 27 cents. And boom, okay, at 35, you lose 5 million ounces of silver. And it goes 35 bid immediately on the floor. You know what I mean? And you're like, oh boy, here we go. And so now it's just becomes you're sitting up in your chair and it's like all of a sudden you're playing a sporting event and you're losing 100-0. But there's 4 quarters left on the clock. So you have to keep playing. You know what I mean? And it's like, wow, and it's really seeing the P&L number and the money fly out the window is just a life-changing experience. You know what I mean? Because you lose $500,000 in a heartbeat and your life changes. You start thinking about, wow, am I going to be invited back to quote this medal tomorrow? And then, the bank realizes that they're in the market, they're taking risk, you're mitigating it as best you can. And, we're in the business. We're in the Wild West business of quoting medals to fast money hedge funds and mutual funds in the early 90s. And that's what we do, so it profoundly changed me. It made me think, it made me slow things down quite a bit as a desk trader and really try to do things a little bit more on my own pace and not just, hey, the salesman's standing up, he needs a price. Okay, spit out a price. Okay, like, did you really think about where you could get 5 million ounces back if he paid you? Did you really think about where you could sell it if he sold it to you? Was the price wide enough? The whole thing. So after you start second guessing all that, you just go around about cutting the risk down because you know that your heart rate starts going lower as you get a million ounces back of that position. And even though you lost the money, there's that huge relief of, okay, now it's only costing me 40 grand a tick, and there's a little bit of breathing room there to strategize. And then, what happens is you wake up other clients on the desk, you get orders from other people, and then at least you have a two-way market and some things to lean on. So that's what we did. And man, it was ugly, but thanks for bringing back that horrible memory, Matt.
I wanted to, give you a good old kick in the shins to start. Wait. Another detail though. Who, like you're 27, you're talking to management. Is management like some 35-year-old guy who doesn't even speak English? Who's around you that helps pull you through this and get you on the other side? 'Cause you didn't do this in a bubble.
Very good point. There was, what's hard is that now I'm really a New York trader in the head office in Zurich. The best English speaker on the desk. Yes, I was sitting around a lot of Swiss German traders. I had befriended 2 of the young guys that were there sitting next to me trading their books in FX and metals and things like that. And so they kind of guided me on, look, this is what we got to do right now, right? And so you understood that, let's get the word up to management and tell them that we're dealing with this fire. And kind of just make sure that we're doing the most responsible thing we can do. So once I had, the Mark Yen trader at the time slide over and understand that there was a need to help a more senior guy than me, you know what I mean? And he was the liaison right to management. It's and he was really cool about it because, he's on the desk, he sees what's going on. He's supportive of, quoting the price and everything. And he's like, we have a situation now, in Swiss German, which was the difficult part to me, where he's sitting next to me. And you're like, wow, man, I might be on a plane home tomorrow, this will be interesting. So once you had that partnership and created the awareness, then it was kind of an all hands on deck, you know what I mean? Then you had salesmen making calls. Hey, we're super active in here. We saw a buyer down there. You start to piece together the situation, and then you call up a couple mines and they say, okay, sell 1 million silver up here if it gets there. So you're like, oh, at least I got a backstop on 1 million ounces up a dime. You know what I mean? So then everything, the pressure cooker starts letting a little bit of pressure out. You know what I mean? And then you can kind of make better decisions. But I guess that was the safeguard to our survival. I would say was going right up the chain, saying this is what happened, and everything really kind of worked out over time. Once I knew I had this conversation with senior management and knew that it wasn't like, okay, you're fired, things got a lot better.
All right. Take me all the way back. Born and raised Long Island, right?
Yeah.
Mom and dad, how did they end up there? Like, are they from Long Island originally? Where'd they come from?
Yeah. So my mom's parents came over from Italy. They plopped down in Hollis, Queens. My dad had lived there his whole life. That's where they met, at Andrew Jackson High School. My dad promptly wound up dropping out, essentially. Kind of like a troublemaker, this and that, had a couple of jobs, did his own thing. And they stayed together and got married pretty young, like most people back then did, like in their mid-20s. And so it was a really comfortable life because I got super lucky. My dad got to live in America during the actual American dream, is something that I always can look back on. Like he was able to, by the time they had me, he had just gotten his job on Wall Street via parking cars at a restaurant.
Do you know the story?
It's literally typically one of those stories where, a guy that worked at the time, the first firm that he joined, I'm trying to think of the name, Turbush and Powell was like the first mini firm that he had an in with. And the guy that ran the firm always went to the restaurant when he came home where my dad worked. My dad became friends with the guy. The guy loved my dad. So he was like, listen, man, you should come in and work with us one day. We do this, we work on a desk, we trade stocks. And my dad was like, really? And so he
valeting cars.
Yeah. So he took that leap. It worked out for him. And he was a natural because he was super street smart, despite being a guy that hated school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, if I had to label him, he had a PhD in street smarts. And so he took right away to the trading game, wound up getting a seat from the back office on the over-the-counter market maker desk, starts with Dean Witter Reynolds. Oh, you know what it was? He was at the company that was Reynolds when Dean Witter Reynolds merged. Do you remember that? I don't know. That was like eons ago, right? So he went from this Turbush and Powell to the Reynolds firm. Dean Witter buys Dean Witter Reynolds, and through that, he winds up developing, over 10 years, a leadership role on their desk. I remember when Microsoft went public and he came home and he was like, yeah, I got this new name on my pad, MSFT, Microsoft. And we were like, what the hell is that? He was like, I have no idea. It's a computer company. I have no idea what the fuck they do. And that was kind of it with like everything that he did. He just understood what was going on with the numbers. He understood the urgency of the competitive nature of the game. He understood losing money. And so I think that that's what helped him survive. He was a good market maker and became a really good senior market maker for Morgan Stanley when he finally retired. And he had it in his blood. And so I picked up on that. The way he used to come home from work, super energized, like even off the train for an hour, he would have stories to tell, and this happened and that happened. And I was like, man, that sounds like fun. And so that's kind of something that always bled into our dinner table conversation. And so by the time I got to college, I was like, man, I want to be a trader. I don't know how or when or what, but it is something that I want to do.
All right. What about mom? We're getting more of these childhood details out of you. This is the way this has to go. Mom stay at home? Was she doing anything?
Stay-at-home mom, off the boat Italian. My grandparents lived downstairs with us. So we were one of those families where the grandparents help buy the first house for like $30,000 in North Merrick. And they lived downstairs from my mom and dad and I and my sister for our entire life, or for the rest of their entire life. And so what's kind of a wild, I guess, segue in my life was that my grandfather, Anthony Cafaro, who I was named after and am apparently a carbon copy of, died on my 16th birthday. And that's when I kind of felt like this really heavy thing was like becoming a man was like, I don't know. I felt something about it because it happened. He died on the 9th and was buried on my birthday. That's what it was. So anyway, I felt this big I don't know, family historical transitional thing in me where like this guy who was my grandfather, like I was always looking up to him, he's gone. You know what I mean? And it's like me and my dad now. And so that kind of changed things for me, I guess, dramatically, because I was super close with my maternal grandfather.
Mom
So that
could
was
cook?
us, man. Living
Mom-
in America. Genius. Yeah.
Let's hear about what mom was cooking.
Forget it, man. You know, every day of the week, Matt, was its own menu item, right? It started on Monday was always soup.
Wait. Is she cooking for the grandparents and the family? Are they doing it
It's-
with her? What's the meal arrangement?
It's
This is an important
basically
detail.
mom and grandma are teaming up together and working all day, you know, making dinner is essentially what's going on. You know what I mean? They're the co-parents of us. They're at home making dinner. My grandfather is a private chauffeur when I was a young kid, so he would go to work and drive a very wealthy gentleman around the Bronx and Queens. And my dad would come home from Wall Street. My grandfather would come home, and dinner would go on the table at 6:30 every night. And it was literally an amazing dinner. But it was like the kind of thing where it was almost a preset menu. Monday was soup and leftovers, right? Tuesday and Wednesday was a wild card. But then Thursday, you were getting into like a chicken dinner. Friday was pizza. Saturday was steak dinner. Sunday was macaroni, and that never changed. Never, ever, 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 ever. So that was kind of like part of my DNA growing up.
Let's talk about those soups for a second. It's soup season. We're recording this. Like, what are some good memories on the best hits of soups?
Like the typical like Italian wedding soup, you know what I mean? Like delicious chicken based soup with little meatballs and orzo and spinach and kale and Swiss chard and stuff like that. You know, that was a huge thing. Swiss chard soup was like one of my favorites. It was just like hot spinach soup, and you dump like a pound of Parmesan cheese in it, and it's off the charts. So that's the stuff that we were making. Yeah, and you didn't realize how good you had it back then. But it was a 3-course meal going down every night. My grandfather and dad, like, you know, ate like kings with big smiles on their face. That's all I remember.
And then slept really well after.
Yeah.
probably
Got up and went to work with a smile too. You know what I mean? They were collecting 15% interest rates, Matt. You know what I mean? You put the money in the bank at the end of the year. You buy Christmas presents. You go on vacation with the interest. Life was good back then.
Siblings? You got siblings?
I have a younger sister, Gina, that is still to this day like the closest person on earth to me. My parents are gone, so it's she and I.
What's the age gap between you and Gina?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. And
Yeah.
younger sister.
Yes.
So at 16 with the funeral of grandpa, is that like, does younger sister also, does that pull you closer in some weird way too?
Man, everything that Gina and I have gone through with our family, including, you know, losing our parents. My mom died at 60 years old, battled cancer for 12 years. So Gina and I went through all of that together. Same thing with my dad at 73 to 76, you know what I mean? And when you have a super tight nuclear family and you go through losing a parent twice, that you become inseparable with your sibling, you know what I mean? Like we think and act alike kind of thing, you know what I mean? We're always in each other's thoughts, which I thank God every day for.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, young Tony, are you playing sports? Are you just running amok in the streets? What's the personality like? And give me like pre-16 first. What do you like as a kid?
Oh, I was a little league player, man. You know, that was
Little
part of
league.
the
What position?
baseball. Baseball was part of, you know, that was the American dream, man. It was, I remember that so well. Like my little league experience was amazing. We had great coaches and a great family experience. I have an Aunt Ray who's alive to this day. My aunt and uncle used to come to every single one of my little league baseball games. They had 4 boys of their own who had all since grown up. And so they were at every game with my parents. We had a great team, like kind of similar group of people all through my little league experience. And that was just amazing. Taught me competitiveness, taught me a little grit from being a, South Shore, Long Island candy ass. But we were very Gen X. We were free range kids. It was, go out and be home when the lights go on at night kind of stuff as a childhood. So it was a lot of dirt bikes and then eventually drinking beers in the woods and listening to Judas Priest and that kind of thing as a late teen. Transitioned to start playing lacrosse in junior high school. That became a big part of my life. went to a super competitive high school, played lacrosse there, was somewhat of a big shot in college, and then went to a top 20 D1 school, and there were 30 of me on the field, and so you learn that competition super quickly. But that was another blessing, because while I rode the pine for a national championship contender, and we went to the national championship twice, my freshman and sophomore year, lost both times. So that was a pretty exquisite experience to have going into Cornell. And lacrosse, I guess, is still a part of my life. I coached my son. He played at the same high school I did. He now plays for South Carolina Gamecocks, their club team. So it's still a big part of my life.
What's this transition to the fancy school in high school, or the way you just explained it? Like, what's the big deal school?
I got to tell you, a couple of guys, we were all local hometown kids, right? And I would have gone to Brookside Junior High School. I went to Brookside Junior High School. I would have gone to Calhoun High School in Merrick. And a lot of the guys that I had, a couple of guys that were athletes and just total like type A guys from the neighborhood that I know, those guys were like, we're going to Chaminade. Like, I'm going to Chaminade to wrestle. I'm going to Chaminade to play lacrosse. And I was like, what in hell is Chaminade? Like, what is this name, this funny name? What is it? And you learn. It's like, it's a Catholic school. It's a pretty big deal around here. You got to take a test to get in. It's, very serious. You wear a coat and tie to school every day, taught by Marianist brothers, great athletics, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I think I want to get in the mix. So I wound up going to Chaminade. I applied, got in, which was no big deal. You take a test, you get in, you go to school there, and then proceeded to hate every day of my life for the first 2 years. Because I got sick, man. I had a kidney failure experience after my freshman year. So I spent that summer on the couch with my feet up, going to the doctor 4 times a week.
Wow.
So that was really a treacherous time in my life. And then I wound up having to take medicine for that. That just wrecked me. I had to take steroids to control it. And I got every side effect in the book from this drug, and then some, that they had never heard of. And it destroyed me, like, really bad. But that's one of the things that shaped my life. I always say that. Like, that's what made me a lot tougher than the average bear, I think.
So that experience, especially at the beginning of high school and at a new school, a health event knock you.
And so I was probably a pretty vain kid too. And the hard part about this was that it blew my face up. So I had chubby cheeks, and I had the worst acne you could picture on a human being. You weren't
just on steroids. You were on what, like 80s steroids?
Yeah. I was on a couple of different things that, like, I had pimples all over my body.
Yeah.
And like, I couldn't look in the mirror. And I'd get pimples in my ears that would get infected and hurt and all this. And I was just like the sourest, most miserable bastard on the face of the earth for 2 years. And the kidney problem went the same way that it came, out of the blue. No more protein in the urine, no more swollen ankles. It was like, wait, what happened? And the doctor was like, I don't know. But it's gone. You've outgrown it. Your kidney function is back. And that was like, what? That was like nothing short of experiencing a miracle to me.
So like one day you just notice like you're getting better. You go to the doctor and they're like, you're healed.
Yeah, I had
being a teenager.
I used to have to test for protein in my urine 3 times a day. And it was always on the scale. It was always 3, 4, 5, like disaster area. You know what I mean? Like the top of the fucking tab, it would light up. You know what I mean? You'd be like, oh God, this sucks. And then it gradually went lower, and then all of a sudden it went 0. And there was no protein anymore in my urine. And I showed my doctor, and he was like, this is a good sign.
This is a good sign.
Literally, you know what I mean? And things just got better from there. I got off the drugs. I got my health back. I started being able to work out. And then I think that's what propelled me to have a super strong junior and senior year at Chaminade.
Coming back to school after that, did you feel like, was it a new appreciation almost for, it's like you're catching up. You're like, all my friends have been doing this stuff, and like, now I got to capture this. Was it that kind of a thing?
Yeah, it was kind of a thing where I went from waking up with a frown, to waking up with with a brighter attitude. Like this is like, I feel like that's behind me, and it's hard to not have your health, you know what I mean? You wake up every day and you're kind of battling it. And so when just having gone through that and gotten to the other side of it, I can't even tell you the relief. It was like you just couldn't get the smile off of my face. I got my physical ability back. I was able to compete again and do so, with a great attitude. So I was so looking to have fun on the field that I think that made me a better player for what I would have been or something like that. Because I was just so excited about the opportunity to get out there every day. Now I was going to finally play on varsity, and I just made the most of the moment.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Did the end of the kidney experience and the loss of your grandfather overlap? Was that real close to each other?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I lost him first and then got sick, essentially. It was kind of it was freshman year. Yeah, it was all as I turned 16. Right. So my freshman year in high school, it was the whole thing overlapped. So that was a profound time in my life that I didn't know which way was up. But coming out of it, like I said, it was a great way to wake up every morning and know that I wasn't going to the doctor and I didn't have to pee in a cup and all that shit. So
what's the end of school like? Are you getting courted by colleges? Do you know exactly where you want to go?
I did, because I got recruited by a bunch of schools, pretty good schools in NCAA Division I. And the problem was I had already gone to Cornell for lacrosse camp. Right. So from the time I set foot at Chaminade, everybody was going to Cornell lacrosse camp. And so I was like, I'm in. From the time I first went up to Ithaca in 9th grade and summer after 9th grade, set foot on that campus, I was like, this is where I'm going to school. Somebody's going to have to stop me from going here. This place is the greatest. It was like a campus wonderland. It's on a hill and you're playing lacrosse and you go swimming in the pool, you go swimming in the gorge, and then you hang out with the coaches. Like I was in heaven. So I was just, I'm going to Cornell in my head. I wound up applying, or I got recruited by them. I applied early, got in early, and I'll never forget that I was studying for senior finals my senior year when the letter came. Congratulations, you've got in on early admission. And I was like, okay, close this book up. I'm not studying for this final, that's for sure. So I was a little bit of a wise guy the second half of my senior year, because I had already gotten into school and I was like, can't touch me now. Felt good.
Did anybody, mom, dad, everybody's just on board? Like, I mean, Cornell's a great school. They know this. It's got the reputation at the time.
Yeah. My mom was always surprised at like where I was able to engineer myself, because she didn't know about Chaminade, and I wound up going there, and she don't even know.
Mom and dad didn't even know about, you came home one day and you were like, here's the private Catholic school that I need to go to high school at. Get on board.
My hand to God, I was like, Mike Kaminsky is my hero in this town. He's the best athlete in this town. He's the toughest kid in this town. We play roller hockey all the time. He's 2 grades older than me, and he's going to Chaminade. I was like, I got to figure out what this is, because he's not going to Calhoun where all the other ding-dongs are going. So, like, I noticed that delineation early, right? There was definitely a difference between him and the guys that weren't going there, and I wanted to be more like him. So I was like, I got to check this out. This is where I want to go.
Clearly, you need to do it. And were your parents just like, okay, I guess so? Figure out what we need to sign?
Yeah, they were all for it. Catholic school. Sure. It was weird. I'm kind of like the education driver as a parent, and my dad couldn't have given a rat's ass the entire way.
Because of his experience?
Yeah, because I would get home from Chaminade and my mom would be like, John, look, he got his diploma. And my dad would be like, oh, that's really nice. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't care what was on it. He was like, oh, he got a diploma. Cool.
Your diploma is the equivalent of Microsoft getting assigned.
Yeah. He was just like, okay, this is nice. Right, this isn't where my registry is. He's like, that's great. Good. You know what I mean? Like, so that was kind of like how it worked in my house. And it was, I guess it worked out. So a lot of it happened by happenstance. You know what I mean? Like, you are who you hang out with. And you get into Chaminade and a whole bunch of the guys are going to Cornell lacrosse camp. Next thing you know, you learn that that's an Ivy League school.
Yeah.
You had no idea. And I had to explain, like my parents, I don't think knew what Ivy League schools were, so it was just a different era, man. It was just a different era.
All right. So do you declare a major right away? Do you know what you're majoring in besides playing lacrosse?
I went the jockstrap route at Cornell, right? I applied to the ag school as a business major, which was a very popular pathway for all the football and lacrosse players and wrestlers and hockey players. Wound up joining Chi Psi Fraternity, which was popular athletic fraternity. A lot of guys in ag school, that kind of thing. It was kind of like, if you want to go into a business, you apply to the ag school. Wasn't that difficult to get into. State-supported school. So now I'm going to school for like $11,000 a year going to Cornell University. You know what I mean? And at the time, it seemed expensive. But at the time, my dad was paying the bill with a smile. He was working on Wall Street. He was making money, and everything was beautiful.
What are you thinking as college progresses, as you start to see the light at the end of the college tunnel? What's the awareness of this part of life is about to close?
Man, it was tough. I had an unbelievable fraternity experience.
Talk about this fraternity. How'd you get in? What's the name?
So I got in because I had a really leg up on Cornell University when I went there, right? It's hard to explain. Our number one rival high school, their lacrosse star was one of my best friends. Guy named Mike Cummings, right? His older brother was already at Cornell and a lacrosse phenom there. So when Mike and I both applied to Cornell, both applied early and decided to become roommates together right off the bat. So we go to competing high schools. We're going to go to the same college together. His brother is in the fraternity. We become friends with all of those guys by osmosis. You wind up not looking at another fraternity. You get into this fraternity. You're surrounded by athletes, guys like you, music fans, sports fans, excitement fans, that kind of thing. And you just start forging close friendships that you didn't know at the time would be the majority of your entire human network 30 years later, to the point that we're still in a text chain together, and we talk every day, the lot of us. We get together once a year, and it's like people look outward. I didn't realize how special it was until people looked outward at it, and they're like, your friend group is ridiculous.
Right.
We just took a picture of our group in Nashville, and there's literally 40 dudes there.
40, making the commitment to go show up, spend the time with each other.
Yeah, across like 3 classes, right? So 3 years of school. We've pulled in a couple of other guys from other fraternities that were just our best friends. And we got it, you get people to this outing because people want to see each other. And you walk out of it. I walk out of that gathering walking on a cloud, so motivated because so many of my friends are so much more successful than me that it's unbelievable. Like when you're just having conversations with them, the things you pick up, like, I want to try something like that.
Yeah.
And you just kind of, the juices start flowing, and it's a really great feeling.
So you get pulled into this fraternity because of the elder Cummings sibling.
Yeah.
And I know what you just said, what it means to you now. You realize like where this is, and you realize how rare that is now.
Yeah.
In the moment, and especially as you're like moving on the way through school, like it matures you in certain ways too, as much as I'm sure there was some immaturity involved.
Yeah, there was. I mean, we were very poorly behaved.
Sure.
A lot of the time. What was cool though was that there were guys in our group that became the glue to our group because there was some kind of assumption on their part back then that we were boys for life. And it kind of it takes people different stages to realize that you guys are a forever thing. And we're going to go through ups and downs, and we're going to have fights among us, and we're going to have disagreements, and we're going to judge other guys, and they're going to judge us back. And sometimes it gets cliquey, but what you don't realize then is that it winds up lasting through everything. And so there was a couple of guys that were like, back then were like, hey man, like from freshman break, they were like, hey man, I'm going to come down to your house on fall break and hang out. And you were like, what? Okay. and you're like, sure. Next thing you know, like they're down in your house at fall break and you're like, this is fucking awesome. Excuse my French. You're like, this is awesome. And next thing you know,
making food. You're
mom's
getting
making
three-course
food. We're all
meals.
hanging out. Like she's got another son. She's thrilled to have this guy. I'm now going to go visit him over Christmas in Annapolis. He's going to invite us down to Teddy's house in West Palm Beach for the next summer. And we're going to go down there and hang out. And I was like, I'm in. Like, this is great. I'm on tour. Whatever we're doing, I'm in.
Do you remember who the people were who were aware of their role as like the glue and treated it that way from the jump?
They're still a phone call away. They're still literally among my best friends. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're still the guys that are the glue that love you unconditionally. And that's hard to find. Whenever there's like, I always notice whenever there's a major thing happens in your life or whatever, somebody asks you for a favor, something major happens where you need a contact, I'm going right into that network head first. Hey, help me. Right. And next thing you know, you're a phone call away from whatever solution you were looking for.
Amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
I mean, I can get on any golf course in the country in 2 phone calls. I guarantee it. It's cool. It's a cool networking power to have.
It's a very cool networking power to have. And especially because it's maintained. So
Yeah.
End of college, same thing. You're getting recruited for jobs, you're Ivy League. So like, what do you think you're going to do after college at the end of college?
First, I'm going to Australia to hang out.
Before the trading career gets launched.
Yeah. Luckily,
I know you wanted to do that, but that's
I didn't know I wanted to do it either. I didn't know I wanted to do it at the time until my best friend from high school. Now we're both graduating college. He went to Villanova. I went to Cornell. We have got mutual friends. 2 of my Cornell teammates make the world team of lacrosse, right? So the world games are now going to be played in Perth, Australia in 1990 over the summer. And my roommate from high school, now we're in college, in separate colleges, basically calls me up and he's like, we're going to this. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Dude, we're going to this after we graduate. What are you kidding me? I'm going to ask my dad. This is the present I want. And so we arranged that. And I asked for a plane ticket for a graduation present with an open-ended number of flights on it. And we flew all the way to the west coast of Australia first before we started the job search. So we left on the 4th of July weekend. To make a long story short, we went to the west coast for the World Games of Lacrosse, back to the east coast, up the east coast, to New Zealand and Hawaii to California by Christmas. So I make it home by Christmas of that year. So it's like a 5-month on the road trip. 3.5, 4 of it were in Australia, backpacking around, back through Hawaii, where we were supposed to spend 3 days. We wound up staying for 3 weeks because we didn't want to come home. And we landed in one of the coolest places ever. So that was the roundabout, man. Then I got back from there at Christmas time, started literally pounding the pavement, and knew that I wanted to get a job on a trading desk. That's the one thing that I had going for me. Was my dad was like, I don't do that. I don't take that's a bullshit job. I'd rather see you be a peon on a trading desk or a back office than go and do that. Like, that's not a good idea. Wound up getting a job on a trading desk with Sumitomo Bank on the 107th floor of 2 World Trade. So that's my first seat out. I wound up sitting between a crazy Japanese forward dealer and an American guy named John Spallanzani, who's got a great reputation in finance today. I believe he works for Bill Miller nowadays. Yeah, he's a super talented guy, but always a major face on Wall Street. I learned a lot from him. And it was really all about, I got to see what this trading seat is about. I want to see what the jobs are like, and it was sitting on a forward trading desk, right? So you're kind of trading out the calendar, which was a super useful perspective to have as a first job out. You kind of just learn that the calendar is an important part of risk management, if that's fair to say. Right off the bat, because you're trading the interest rate differential out the calendar between 2 countries, between 2 currencies. That's essentially the job of that desk. So you understand what interest rates mean and what financing means and what your carry means and all kinds of stuff like that.
Were you prepared at all by school for this, or was this all like learned on the fly on the spot?
No, man, the Japanese guy that ran the desk used to destroy me on a daily basis.
How so? Give me something.
Destroy
Give
me.
a
Like
taste.
I would be his assistant and he'd be doing trades and shouting trades at me with a terrible accent and be like, "What's my position?" I'd be like, "I don't know." And he'd be like, "You gotta be better." And like literally would kill me. And I would like turn to John, who was like, my conscience. He'd be like, just relax, just relax. And I would be, I was twice the size of this guy and I had to stop myself from wanting to wring his neck because he was totally abusive, but I was learning. And learning urgency and learning the urgency of knowing your position and keeping your position and, knowing your position when you're quoting people and how to shade the quote and how to, man, there's so much to go into all that, right? Matthew, we could go on forever about what all the learning that takes place in becoming an interbroker bank dealer, or an interbank dealer, which is a huge job and a great job. So that was an amazing experience.
Where's it
But
go
no,
after
I wasn't
that?
prepared.
Yeah, no, you're not supposed to be. Trial by
No.
fire in the best way.
Yeah.
Come home before dark. Don't get
Yeah.
killed.
It's the same. It was the same thing. It was the exact same thing.
Where's that job take you? Where does it take you next?
Into the markets
Do tell.
was cool. I liked the social side of the job. I liked that after work, you were going out with a broker. You were going out with another guy in the business. I was good at that. I liked people. So I liked meeting people and I liked starting new relationships with new people. I loved hitting it off with guys that, whatever, bonding over the Yankees, over lacrosse, whatever it was. And, you realize that the street is a big fraternity at some level. It's a big network at some level. And you figure out that, you can access a big part of this network through your own network. And so now you're like, okay, I'm alive here. I know guys that work here. I know guys that work here. And then I started getting recruited. When you start talking to people on the street, they know what your job is, and they're like, "Hey, you could probably help us on our desk here." And then I met a guy at UBS was like, "We really need a spot dealer right now. I don't know if you're interested in trading spot FX, but we need a dealer right now, and you're totally qualified." So I wound up taking that job because it was better pay and it was a couple of different, better things about it. There was more opportunity at the Swiss bank than at the Japanese bank. And I learned the spot markets by sitting next to a girl who was an unbelievable dollar Swiss trader. Robin Katz from Syracuse University, born and raised on the Upper West Side, an absolute legend in the FX industry at the time. She's like in her late 20s. She's already got one of the reputations as being like the best FX dealer on the street. So I sit down next to her. She takes me under her wing and like really teaches me what's going on. She was a huge ARB player. So she was always playing currency futures against spot currency, et cetera, et cetera. So I learned all about that game and got deeper into the markets of knowing people. I really enjoyed getting to know people on the street, knowing where they were, what they were doing, how to stay in touch with them, what mutual overlay we had in terms of like relationships and contacts. And so that was really helpful too. And then from UBS, I got recruited for my job at Goldman Sachs via doing a good job at UBS for them.
So again, it's the networking connection of you did such a good job at one place, you're getting poached by the counterparty basically to say like, hey,
so I had this situation where Goldman Sachs had a huge credit line with UBS. And one of the currency traders at Goldman Sachs used to have to piece together this gigantic daily rollover in their dollar yen position, right? So since we had a huge credit line with them, I could quote them a super tight price in the things that they needed. So the broker would just come straight over to me and it kind of became routine. Like, listen, I need a tight, Tom Next rollover price for a good client in size for me. And I like kind of, this was the crux of what we did. So I could give this guy a really competitive price. So I gave him a price on the screws and he was like, dude, I can seriously deal on this price. This is fine. And he was like, yeah, go ahead. And so I used to accommodate him every day because it was no problem for us to handle liquidity. Right.
Right.
So he was like, I want to meet this guy. right? The guy on the FX desk at Goldman Sachs is like, take me out to dinner. Let's go. I want to meet this guy. So we went out to dinner. I met him a couple of times. To make a long story short, he's like, I've got a seat over here for you if you want to talk about it. I was like, where do I sign? And so wound up getting a job at Goldman Sachs without going through 4,000 interviews, which was the process at the time.
Yeah.
So that was, it was kind of in the side door of the boys club. You meet a half a dozen guys, you talk to 2 managers, you have a little bit of a blessing on the way in, and things work out. And I get wound up sitting next to a guy who is still one of my best friends in the world, a guy who was my boss, one of the youngest huge successes at Goldman Sachs, the head of the metals trading desk at like 30 years old at the time, UPenn grad, takes me under his wing from day one. And that was the beginning of another level of market rigor.
Who's this guy? Say his name.
A gentleman named Chris Carrera.
Okay. What's the first time you meet Chris Carrera? Do you remember?
In the interview, yeah, when the gentleman named Peter, who brought me into the firm, the guy on the FX desk that I was quoting the prices for, was like, all right, you got to meet the head of the metals desk, the head of this desk, the head of the oil trading desk, the head of the FX sales, blah, blah, blah. And so I met Chris. I went into an office and was super, super intimidated by him. He's a very serious guy. He speaks very slowly and carefully and very calculated. He looks smart. He's extremely intense. He's sharp dressed. You know that he makes a fortune. He's really good at what he does. And you're like, man, this is what the big cats look like. And so we actually hit it off. I got hired and wound up becoming one of his right-hand men right on the spot. And he did a very similar thing to me that the forward yen dealer did at Sumitomo Bank, but he was more tactful about it, right? So he would test me on the desk and embarrass me with something that I didn't know. He'd be like, what's our physical gold position right now? And I would be like, what do you mean? And he'd be like, how do you not know what our physical gold position? We're sitting here winging around thousands of contracts of futures, millions of ounces. How could you not know what our cash position is? And you're like, he's telling me something.
Yeah.
Right? He's sending me a signal. So I better know every day, every minute what the goddamn, like that's what that's what the message I got was. Become familiar with that, know what that is. Then I knew what our ARB position was. Then you become a useful right-hand man, right? If this becomes your science for the boss, get more and more responsibility. And so while he would berate me during the day and crush me, it was always with good intention. And then he would be like, at the end of the day, he would say, come on, we're going to Gotham for dinner. And so from the day that I went there, started working with him, he probably took me to Gotham Bar and Grill for dinner over 100 times. Many times, several nights consecutively in a row, because he was living the life of a real dealer, where you're in at 6 a.m, you're trading all day, and then you have a business dinner every single night of the week, because there's not room really to have a social dinner when you run the metals trading desk at Goldman Sachs, because there's not. And that's what it means to work there. It's like, okay, like you got the buy-in, I need a 24/7 guy. So that's when you learn that there's not individual days of the week that you're picking up your lunch pail and going to work and sitting down on the desk and saying, okay, what are we going to, do today? It's Sunday afternoon strategy meeting into following the markets in Tokyo Sunday night, into the New York markets into Tokyo, into the New York markets into Tokyo, into the New York markets into Tokyo 5 times until you got to the close on Friday. And then you could take your first breath of the week and say, okay, what's going on outside of metals trading? So that's how intense it was. In the middle of the night, someone on the desk wants to buy gold and you're the gold dealer. You get the phone call, man. Right? Because at Goldman, everything was centralized. So everybody that was trading gold was trading it through a central book. And if there was somebody in Tokyo that decided, dollar yen just did this, let's buy some gold. Call the gold dealer at home. TG, 2 o'clock in the morning, buy 500,000 ounces of gold for us. Okay. And
pull out the phone book. Get
Pull
to
out
work.
the star tack, get the
Yeah.
pad out, start making calls, man.
What you do this until what, about 2000?
Yes, when Goldman Sachs went public.
What was it like around the firm with the IPO? That had to feel surreal.
Yeah, it was. I didn't like it.
Why?
It got cutthroat.
How
Really
so?
bad. Oh,
What did
man.
you What did you see that made you aware of how that changed?
Guys jockeying for position, right? Like for the last partner class, like it was, you were going to radically change your life if you were a partner when they went public versus if you weren't, right? So the race for the last partner class as a private firm was ugly under the hood, and you notice guys jockeying for position, you know what I mean? And maybe figuring out ways to prop themselves up and to keep someone else down, or put this piece of information in front of somebody first, or do this first, or, things like that, and there was like, it was not something that was comfortable to me, like at all. And I didn't like the feeling or flavor of that. So
It feels like that's a different form of a culture shock from what you had experienced really post-college on. Because
Yeah.
there was even if it was tough, I mean, it's tough like sports are tough. Yeah, you're going to get your butt kicked a little, but you're going to get stronger because of it. And
Yeah.
that shift to going public and the attitudes internally, that had to feel really...
Yeah, it was intense, man. And you could see it. You could see the intensity of a lot of things building. And the beauty was that it provided another safety blanket for me. The beauty of it was that my wife was at the firm. We started off dating. We got engaged and married.
I wanted this story too, because she was at Goldman, right? Your wife is no slouch.
No, she's a CFO of a broker-dealer today. She's a serious Wall Street professional. She's a master-class accountant.
Where do you guys meet? Because you're both at Goldman when you meet?
She got assigned to my P&L. So she's a controller.
Oh, the ironies.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, okay, we got a new P&L girl that you have to liaison with. And you look at her and I was like, wow, this is interesting. That, I'm attracted to her automatically. We learned quickly that we went to brother or sister high schools, but never met each other. We have this overlapping background. We grew up 10 miles apart from each other, have a totally similar background, but never met. I love the town at the time that she lives in, which is the town that she grew up in, and all of that kind of worked for me. So that's how we wound up getting together back then. It was really, it went well until we got called into an office at Goldman when our boss had gotten the word that we were dating.
Disclose.
Yeah.
Kids.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, look, he's like, I have no problem with this, but I can't have you working on his P&L. As you can see, that's a conflict of interest. So they kind of just professionally separated us, and everything went fine from there.
Everything went swimmingly inside the squid from there.
Yeah.
So it goes well for you guys then? Like,
Yeah.
the IPO, all that stuff goes well.
It went well. We had a great year as it was in 99 and 2000. And so when the firm went public, it was like it was like a double bonus year, right? Because you were getting an IPO award of some sort. And for us, because we were a team, it was kind of like an exponential thing where we both got good bonuses that year. We both got an IPO award. And when we combined it, looking at it, we were like, reasonable sum of money here. Let's make sure we take care of it and look after it. So that was, the beginning of our relationship. Was both being professionals there and figuring out how to navigate that, which was tricky. But we weren't trying to hide anything. We were just attracted to each other and wound up dating like a lot of people at Goldman Sachs do. When you spend 24 hours at a place and you really don't afford yourself a huge social life, you wind up bonding with the people that you work with.
Yeah, your social life happens in the gaps.
It kind of does. Yeah, it's like you find yourselves walking out of the office at 8:00 at night and be like, "You want to get a drink?" Stuff like that, and that's how kind of how it goes, I guess.
So what happens post I guess in that post 2000 period, what do you do? I mean, the tech bubble comes apart. Like life got weird. What are you doing there?
Well, I had been lucky because I was a music guy, and so I invested in the tech bubble and made some money. I learned. So when I lived, you'll like this, Matt.
I can't wait to hear this story.
I lived
I've
around.
waited
I
for the
lived.
music thing to crop up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Here's
So
our gateway.
I lived when I worked at Goldman Sachs the whole entire time. I lived on Mercer and West 4th Street, which, as you know, is around the corner from Tower Records, the most famous record store in the world, right? So you can imagine, given our mutual love of music and playing instruments, how much time I used to spend at that Tower Records, right?
And that place was like
Banging. It was banging.
multiple floors, the listening rooms. I mean, come on.
New stuff playing on every floor, different genres, and you had the rack to flip through, and there was a gorgeous girl right across from you looking through the rack, and you were like, I'm never leaving this place. So you spend an enormous amount of time there, and then Amazon comes around, and then you can buy your records online. And I'm like, are you guys seeing this? Like, I just got the Allman Brothers Live at the Fillmore fucking double album just delivered to my house. You know what I mean? Like, are you guys seeing this? And, there wasn't a lot of catching on. There really wasn't. There wasn't a lot of, yeah, that's genius. So I managed to buy some Amazon and buy some, a couple of other tech names that are like periphery names that I don't even remember at the time. And at the time, you're working at Goldman Sachs when you have a 30-day holding period and you're like, oh my God, this thing might collapse by the time. And meanwhile, now it's 30 days later and the stock's doubling. You know what I mean? Because it's the .com bubble. And you're like,
Right.
What just happened? So to make a long story short, so I had made some money in the .com bubble. Then we got the IPO, the Goldman IPO and the IPO award. So I was good. You know what I mean? Like, I felt good about leaving. I really did. At that point, I was like, okay, like financially, I'm good. I always had the thing where they were encroaching on my freedom, right? And I knew it. And I had to, make a lot of decisions a lot of the time on like, show that my loyalty to this firm so that I get paid, et cetera, et cetera. And then eventually, like once you had, I don't know, it wasn't enough to retire on by any means, but once I had made my first like reasonable amount of money in my life, I was like, okay, all of that agony that I'm living through, the reporting every minute of accountability, of rigor and never stop, like I'm not cut out for that. I am not wired for this. So I had an opportunity. There was something laid out right in front of me for a group of guys that wanted to trade. They wanted exposure to the .com bubble. They wanted guys in the arena trading stocks. They were willing to put up capital. They wanted the leverage. They wanted guys in there shooting it out every day. So I started a little trading firm with another partner within the confines of literally a day trading desk. We used all of their software. We had our own little office where we had just the machine trading guys, 4 of us at the maximum capacity, and we levered $5 million every day and just traded tech stocks. The most profitable trader in the room was a kid that was a senior at NYU.
Naturally.
Yeah, because he was good at video games. And back then, if you were trading the montage, you could look at the stock price market quote. And at the time, you could see who the buyers were, who the buyers and sellers were. And a lot of the time, you would notice that like Morgan Stanley is top bid in this name, and he's not going away, right? And Morgan Stanley's top bid, and he just takes whatever stock they throw at him. So you would learn how to front run buyers like that, and that became the mechanism. And this kid was so good at it that he couldn't make less than 25, 30 grand a day, just out of thin air, coming in flat, going home flat. You'd hear a lot of clicking, a lot of tapping, and a lot of, yeah. And you were like, what is going on here? You know what I mean? But the experience was unbelievable. So we sat down in March of 2000 with the NASDAQ peeking its nose over 5K for the first time to trade the bull market in tech stocks. And that was really some experience. I wouldn't know where to start. That's another podcast.
That's a whole episode just to talk about those handful of months. What does it spectacularly end?
So to wrap that whole thing up in a bubble, in a bow, I would say, the first, for whatever it was, when we started, the market started coming off hard. So there were these huge ranges every day that you couldn't help but make money in, right? The beginning of it was extremely profitable for whatever reason. Like I was able to get into a groove and sit down and make money right away. And then as the market like got violent and really started coming apart, so we spent the first 9 months kind of making money, like luckily on a regular basis. And then the next 9 months, banging our heads against the wall to try to break even to cover our trading costs. Yeah. The market went lower. The bear market got more vicious. We were trading more and going nowhere, right? So like it was just this thing where we're like, man, like what happened? We were just killing the markets. Now all of a sudden time is going on and we're not making any money. Yeah. So you got to figure out when to pull your stop loss as a family man who's got a couple of kids now. And like, wow, I thought this was going to work out. It is not. I look over at my old desk at Goldman Sachs and a 10-year commodity bull market super cycle starts right in my face. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, I just made the wrong move here. And I knew it. So it was one of the most valuable trading lessons of my life as a big picture thing, right? I'm chasing the dot-com bubble right out the door of Goldman Sachs. You can analyze that in a lot of different ways, and you can very easily look back at it and say, that was a dumb move, right? You could have just committed your life to this place and maybe been worth more money now, blah, 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 blah. But nobody's got a hindsight is 20/20, right? So
yeah. And hey, cost of tuition in its own way, an expensive lesson, could have been a lot more expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, then it was just back into the network. Yeah. Back into the actual Cornell network. Okay, what's everybody doing? Where are guys? Where are the bodies lying?
So that's where you went at this point too? That was like you realized what was going on and you went to the Cornell buddies first.
Yeah, because I wound up learning that I had a bunch of friends that were equity execution guys that I really didn't know. I had my nose down in the commodity markets, and your friends are getting jobs at different places, and you're like, oh, he works there, he works there, he works there. Okay, cool. And then when you dug deeper, you were like, oh, this guy's an execution trader for a mutual fund. He's an execution trader for a hedge fund. Okay, if I get a seat out there, I can probably execute stocks for these guys. So I wound up getting a job on the floor of the stock exchange, working for Stuart Frankel, via a relationship that my boss at Goldman Sachs had. One of his friends worked for this group, started with them on the floor, started learning the mechanics of the stock market a lot better from the NYSE floor, worked for a great direct access firm, family-owned firm, real gentleman, I have to say, in hindsight. And from there, I kind of built out my equity network. Figure out what guys are where my book is valuable, who I can get orders from to get paid on an agency basis. And that's when I went to, I guess when I went to machine trading, but I was coming out on this end, everything that I make was eat what you kill. So it was from working at Goldman Sachs where you got a cushy salary and healthcare and a bonus at the end of the year to now your P&L is done on a spreadsheet and you better hope it ain't zeros at the end of the month, Yeah.
And you're explaining that to your spouse, your kids. That's like a whole other level of pressure to be living in eat what you kill land. Yeah. And knowing that the other one exists. Yeah. It's not like you didn't know that exists.
Yeah. And I knew that I was giving up that cushiness for freedom. And, that and somewhere underlying in my most honest self, there was a quest going on there. When I look back on myself, that it was like, I love the competitiveness and the intensity of Wall Street, and I hated the fact that they owned me at that age. Like, owned you. You know what I mean? Like, you're out at a bar having a good time, wrong phone call comes in. Okay, good night, everybody. You're going home to trade some gold, like, it just was what it was. It was fine. You know what I mean? But it definitely, over time, I was like, I don't want to spend my life doing this. Like, I don't think this is the angle that I really want on Wall Street.
So that's bubbling up in your head in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
Take me all the way up to, pre-global financial crisis era. Because you were one of the people who started seeing weird stuff. The spidey sense was tingling.
Yeah, for sure.
What happened?
So within I had a really weird segue in my sales trading career. I went from the floor of the exchange to work at Bank Hapoalim, an Israeli bank, right? They were literally starting up an equity desk, and they needed a big producer, and they hired me to run the desk. Knock on wood. It was a great job, right? I struck an unbelievable deal. It was lightning in a bottle, right? It was a foreign bank trying to get their hands on some of the tech bubble as the bubble was breaking, trying to claw their way into the commission business, just looking for another P&L vertical. And I had a great career there for several years. And then what invariably happens when you realize that you're an eat what you kill guy that winds up eating a lot, management is still going to come after the deal that they made with you. So this was where I first learned that dynamic, when the guy would fly over from Israel and say, how come you're making all this money? The desk is only making so much money. You're making all the money. And I was like, you signed the contract.
That's the deal we had. That's what it's called.
You put it in front of me. We signed it. And that's what it is. So you immediately start there's a grinding that's going on, because a lot of the guys that are your boss when you have that job are rent seekers. You know the rent seekers on Wall Street, right? The middle manager that can't do a fucking thing, excuse my French, except manage up really well like a brown nose and figure out what you're doing and keep you down, right? Like those guys are all over the street, but they're the middle guy, and they'll get more out of you, and they'll suck up to the guy above them, and they'll get paid on what they're doing in the middle for doing nothing, right? So when you learn that those guys are always going to be your boss, you start getting feisty and kicking and screaming a little bit and standing up for everything that you're doing. And so from there, I wound up joining Goldman Rose, and that's where I had a great run. I got tired of dealing with the Israeli people at the Israeli bank, and I had a friend named Ernie Dahlman that started this broker-dealer and had been coming after me since I went into the equity market, since that's what he does. I had a team of 4 people at Hapoalim around me that were in my pod, right, so to speak. We had 10 sales traders, but my close pod was 4 of us. So I transported my pod to Goldman Rose to work for Ernie Dahlman, who ran trading, and Simon Rose, who ran banking, and walked into one of the coolest, biggest shark tanks that ever existed on Wall Street. Now, this was a type A killer place that they could make a movie about today with very, very little, very easily. One could make a movie about Goldman Rose. But it was an unbelievable place that they gave you all the rope that you needed to hang yourself, right? So it was like you're selling their research, selling your trading acumen, selling your trading skills, execution skills, and just building a book. It was a bull market for that, and that went great for like 5 years. Make a long story short, Cowen bought them. They hired all of the bankers, let all the sales traders go, because they were going to. We went from having a ridiculous commission deal, making a lot of money, and they're coming to you saying, "We'll pay you $100,000 plus salary," and you're like, "The fuck out of here," And so then it was a literal hell ride for me, because I was really comfortable at Goldman Rose. I had great economics, and all of that was coming apart. So if I tell you what that did to me mentally, that destroyed me, because it was the first time that I felt like, man, I'm starting from scratch now. Like, I struck this sweetheart deal with Ernie because I was bringing over 4 big producers with me at the head of the desk. And now it's every man for himself, and nobody is going to cut me the same deal. Nobody. So that's when I went into what I call the pickup basketball phase of my career. I worked at 3 different shops in 3 years, hated every minute of every day. And all I had to lean on to keep me happy was that I was writing this sales trading note that everybody in the world wanted to read. So from a list of like 1 person that I started keeping up when I got my job on the floor of the stock exchange in like 02, probably 02. So that went from 1 reader organically. So now I had over 1,000 people on the list. And it was all just guys coming to me from the desk. "Hey, can you put this guy on? This guy wants your note. This guy wants your note." And I was like, hell yeah.
Bloomberg chat, faxes. How's this thing going out at
It was
first?
an email, just an email. And I wrote from the hip, and people really loved it. Everybody except the management at the firm, because they were like, you got this attitude, blah, 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 cool it down, blah, And I was probably more politically tweaked back then than I am now, because as an entrepreneur, you learn to give that up because it's too expensive. So back then, I was sending these fireballs out every morning, and while it was fun, they couldn't really control me, because at the time, at Dahlman Rose, I was like, do you want me to take this party somewhere else? And so, they were like, oh, we got to let the kid do what he does, right? This is how he gets the orders in the door. As much as we don't really love it, it is what it is. So to make a long story short, I had that backing of this like big audience that I always knew would be valuable. And then when I decided like I had had enough of playing the pickup basketball, go to a shop, say I could do this much in business, they cut you a deal, you do more business than you said, and at the end of the year, they say, we got to lower your percentage payout. And you're like, you're joking. I just outperformed my top line expectation.
Are you familiar with this term, exceeds? Because
Yeah, exactly. I was about to ask for a raise, but
Right.
you took the floor first. So now we're here, and now you can imagine the kind of difficulty that we're having mentally. You know what I mean? So then that's it. Once I got the blessing of Chris Carrera, my old boss at Goldman, a couple of my big clients, they were like, look, you're capable of doing this. We got you. I was close with Jared Dillian. I picked his brain for a couple of hours. And he was like, go for it, man. I'll help you any way I can. So then I decided to launch the Navigator, the Morning Navigator. I launched it on election day, was the first Navigator, 2016. I launched it with 100% assurance that Donald Trump was going to win the election in a massive upset. I didn't think it. I knew it. And I said the world is going to change really dramatically. I don't even think I can get my head around how dramatically it's going to change. But I really think that this is a pivotal moment, and that's why I'm starting this on my own right now to cover it the way I want to cover it. And started off with 60 subscribers. And, I used to send out a note and crawl up in a ball under my desk in a full panic that I was going to be out of business by the close every day. And, you start building and building and building. And it hasn't been until really the last 2 or 3 years that TG Macro has become what I finally wanted it to be. It's been some trip, man.
What's kept you going with writing the letter, especially for the first, I don't know, almost like 8 years of it?
Yeah. It's the love of markets.
Yeah.
It's literally the joy. Whether you're right or wrong, there's a joy in turning the screens on every day and being proven right or wrong, right? And when you learn that when you can have an edge in something and prove yourself right with a financial benefit to that, right? The art of the winning trade, that is the biggest piece of freedom that you're ever going to figure out how to earn for yourself in your life, And so luckily I took care of some of the .com bubble money that I made and some of the Goldman IPO money I made, and I managed to like make it through the tumultuous times and come out the other side successful. But I guess it was always the fact that it was always about freedom underneath, And so the fact when I started to say like, oh, okay, I can earn a paycheck as a writer in the markets, and I started off contracting with a guy that needed a newsletter. And so I started off writing a little commentary for him. He was paying me like $500 a month. Hey man, just write me this report every week. I love the way you're looking at things. And I was like, to my wife, I was like, this is the beginning, right?
Somebody's giving me money for this.
Yeah,
Can you
exactly.
believe
Some
it?
crazy
It's
bastard
crazy.
wants to hear my write-up. And I was just writing neutral market commentary.
Right.
He was copy pasting it, putting right in the head of his article, market summary from Tony Greer. And people were like, dude, where'd you find this? This is a game changer for you. This is great. So he wound up getting me a bunch of clients. The name grew and things like that. And then when I got the power of meeting Doomberg was a huge moment for TG Macro. Doomberg.
When's that? Is that pandemic times when that happens, or?
Yeah, shortly after, I went to a conference in Dallas and overlapped with him and just missed meeting him in person, right? We have a mutual friend. I didn't even know what Doomberg was because he was a different entity at the time,
Sure.
right? And I'm like, who is this guy? What is he? And my friend who's in the markets, he's a portfolio manager, is like, no, this is a friend of mine. This is a sharp guy. He's kind of reinventing himself on Wall Street. I bet he can help. So I'm not taking him that seriously, right? I'm just like, all right, I'll get on a call with this guy. I'll see what he's to say. I'd love to. So I remember being late for like the first conference call. Like I totally punted it. Like I forgot about it, right? Like a typical year 2 or year 3 of your business, you're fucking pulling your hair out, miss the appointment. I'm like, oh shit, dude, sorry. I get on the next call with him and he is like staring into the screen and so attentive at everything that I'm saying. And I'm like overwhelmed. I'm like, this guy really wants to help me.
Right.
Go just give him the whole brain dump. He looks at my website. He's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This website's a disaster. We're going to basically shit can this whole thing. We're going to start over. It's going to be a lot nicer. It's going to be much more transactional. We're going to, right. And he's very calm about
this is the way he's telling
yeah. It's very scientific, right? Former scientist.
Right.
Very scientific. So what I'm really proud of is that he used the nuts and bolts of TG Macro, and I'm sure that he'd be happy to admit to this, but like learning a lot of the things, what I was doing wrong was what helped him build Doomberg into the ultimate crisp Lamborghini success that it is today. You know what I mean? So making my website more transactional. He taught me what a funnel was. Dipstick has been in business for 2 or 3 years, doesn't know what a funnel is, right? So I figure out what it is, and it takes me 4 or 5 years to build one. And now that I have one, I can honestly say that I understand the power of it and the power of the internet and of mathematics. And so Doomberg was a huge behind the scenes, like he's on the board of TG Macro secretly, right? He's one of my rabbis in the business that I always look to for help. So anyway, that's a big thing that changed TG Macro. Figured, you got to go from being a market guy to being a marketer.
Right.
And they don't overlap with me, right? I just want to try, like I want to sit in the silo and trade in silence and not talk to anybody, and just write about markets. And you realize that you got to get out there. You got to get your name out there. You got to be a salesman. You got to get impressions. You got to blah, blah, blah. And I finally learned all that. And so now I figured out, with Doomberg's rules of figuring out how to set your life up doing what you get to do, not necessarily what you have to do. Engineer a little bit more of know-how into TG Macro. I wound up hiring another person that works with me now that I call my general manager. And we have a great back and forth every day. We have a schedule. We're busy. We have things going on. We're publishing a newsletter. We've got a media component. We're throwing a conference in Nashville. We've got a real business now. Hundreds upon hundreds of subscribers asking us for help. We've got 2 more packages behind the scenes. We've got a Slack channel where I'm keeping in touch with all of the subscribers that want to be in that channel, access to me all day. We've got a Sailor's Deck package where people are getting bespoke analysis on their both tactical trading and portfolios. This is different tiers of the price level of my firm now. So it's come a really long way, Matt. You know what I mean? And now I finally do have a real functioning entity that I'm really proud to say requires all of my attention. And now I've got the freedom on top of it, so you can't get the smile off my face.
It can't get better than that. It can't get better than that. I got a couple of notes. I took a few notes. Can I run you through a couple of things?
Hit me, man.
We gotta go. We gotta go through a few of these things. And this is a recurrent theme right down to what you just explained at the end. So I'm glad this is the first note that I got here. Teamwork and working with others. Like you've assembled a really interesting version now with TG Macro of, it's kind of like the best of the frat, the best of the trading desks, and the best of the business building lessons.
Yeah.
Well, how do you think about teamwork? Like, do you see all those lessons compounded up into the way you're running this now?
Not as well as when you identify them that way, but I have to say that, I guess the thing that's helped me is that I'm not a me guy. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like I'm not an I guy. Like I'm really not. You know what I mean? Like I first of all, I'm very much like a fraternity bro. You know what I mean? Like I have friends that call me alumni, right? 'Cause I just like to stay in touch with people and that whole thing. So I don't know why I said that. I guess I think maybe there's a selflessness component in there somewhere inside where I don't think I have all the answers. I'm a trader, right? So I got to get used to being wrong a lot, right? And when part of your job entails being wrong a lot, you become you gain a humility that you would not have otherwise gained, right? So I think with that trading humility and the times I've gotten my freaking clock cleaned, I have a lot of humility and respect for what's going on in the world, et cetera, and things like that. And I've just tried to carry myself accordingly. You know what I mean? And when I've definitely noticed that, you know, I've learned the power of 1 + 1 can equal 3 and sometimes 5, right? If it's two really good 1 + 1s, you know, so. And I'm always a team guy. I played team sports my whole life. You know what I mean? So it was always about us. It was always about the name on the front of the jersey and not on the back. So I guess that's how that's been good to me.
So there's another through line inside of that too, which is, and I'm interested in this on a couple of levels. You had this awareness of, and it's really clear in trading because there's always a buyer and a seller. Like there's no market unless you got both of those parties. They can't both be exactly right.
Yeah.
There's imperfection in the world. I'm thinking about, was it Cummings? Who's the guy from the Crosstown Rival?
Yeah, Mike Cummings.
Okay, so like with Mike Cummings, you have this understanding of we are competitors, but we're great friends. We fit into this other system in a way where we're competing in this sense. We're not competing here.
Yeah.
I feel like I see that at all these levels, from Mike Cummings to your wife to going on the trading desk. How do you understand that now?
Yeah, you know, that's man. I think that when you go out on your own, wanting to have a team around you gets magnified, right? The loneliness that I experienced in the first 5 years of TG Macro almost broke me. It really did. I mean, and it did bad. Like it kind of did destroy me during that time. Like my dad was dying. You know what I mean? Like the beginning of the launch of TG Macro was kind of like my freshman year at Chaminade. It's like, welcome to change. Bang, your kidneys failed. Bang, you're on your back for a month. You know, like it was just like shots to the chin, and you're like, oh, good grief. You know, and I guess so that there was a lot of that overlap, and I guess there's something you force yourself to come out of it, right? You force yourself to deal with adversity, and you realize that, you know, humans are a lot more malleable and functioning than you realize, and I guess the team aspect does kind of shine through. You just want somebody, you want to know that there's somebody that's there for you. You know, you need that in this business, in this game, and in everything, you know, no matter what it is. So I recognize that early on and always function better on a team.
And there's a there for you and there with you. Because I'm thinking about the story you told right at the top with the gold trade, and just like the people who are like, let me look. Here's what we're going to fly up to the top, but let me look.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. And people are willing to help, you know, and that's how you find out kind of who your real allies are. When you're going through something like that, where, you know, in a lot of different situations, you know, you find out who your allies are when half the world like doesn't want to know your name and the other half is like, hey man, how can I help? What's going on? You know, that kind of thing.
All right. I want you to contrast the guy at Sumitomo Bank where you learned urgency with Chris, was it Chris Carrera?
Yeah.
The slow talker.
Yeah.
How do we contrast learning urgency with the slow talker?
Man. So there was the contrast there was very obvious, right? The difference was Dave Shindo, the Japanese gentleman, he was there just for him, right? He was there. He was there for his P&L. He was a huge producer at the bank, huge. And so he was an ego guy in a position where he could wield his ego like a bulldozer, right? Chris Carrera is not an ego guy, is definitely a great leader, a great team leader, a guy that you would follow into a foxhole with a bag of chips in your pocket, right? He befriended you along the way, right? Like there was no, like Dave Shindo wasn't like, all right, listen, that was a tough day. We lost a little money. Let's go out and have some beers, talk about this or whatever, or not talk about it and hang out. The switch flipped where Chris's intensity kind of eased after the bell rang. You know, and he'd be with the first one in with 2 cups of black coffee and chug his black coffee and then chug Diet Coke and not eat lunch all day because you did not take your focus away from the market to feed yourself. And then he would berate everybody else on the desk that was eating lunch and make you feel bad. And eventually you would just stop eating lunch. You're like, all right, I get it. Let's do it.
It's easier.
Yeah, exactly. It's easier. And now I'm like more focused like he is. So I won't say I didn't eat lunch every day because lunch is a big deal on a trading desk. But there was, at the bell rang, his intensity calmed down. He took a breath. And then within an hour, it was like, what are you doing tonight? And the answer was always nothing, right? Whatever you're doing, whatever you're going to mention is what I'm doing. We're going to go to Gotham. Are you good? I'm good. We're going to go out with the trader at JP Morgan. We're going to go out with the guys from Jefferies. We're going to go out with XYZ Mine. We're going to go out with this central banker. And I was always like, I mean, these are the days you're showing up in an Hermès tie and a suit, you know what I mean? And you're like, man, this is the big deal. I'm into this. And so you'd walk out of the office and sit in a black car on the way to dinner, and he would go over softly, look, this is what you should be thinking about, right? And he would start to arm you with for what's coming, where the other guy was just like, you're in a ditch, and he's going to go, and you got to figure out how to survive. Whereas, you know, with Chris, it was like, you know, you knew that even though he was killing you, that you guys had this bond, right? And that it was just over intensity over the P&L, because there was nothing more important than the P&L. And that's the way you have to be at that shop, because if you're not going to have a seat.
All right,
So that was the difference.
I got one more question for you.
Yeah.
And it's about, you talked about the middle managers, talked about the rent seekers. You talked about just learning that awareness of these people. And I cannot imagine for a second. I feel like your dad didn't explicitly teach you this lesson, but I feel like he was kind of demonstrating that lesson in some of the ways that he approached. Oh, this is cute. You got an A on your report card or an F. Like what? This is middleman talk right here on what this grade is.
Yeah, a little bit. Wow, man. What a great observation.
How are you teaching your kids this? Or how have you tried to pass the awareness of that class of humanity onto your kids and saying, like, there's a world above and below this?
Yeah, you know, I don't think that I've gone through the lesson of, look, there's a whole level of this world out there of people that are going to figure out how to be successful without producing anything, right? There just are, right? Like I haven't gone into that lesson, but I've had given them like the self-sustaining necessity thing. You know what I mean? And they're Gen Z kids. So as much as I love them and have tried to raise completely independent kids, they're softer than Gen X. They just are, because all of their outside stimuli has been different than yours when you were a kid, right? It's like we grew up in 2 different Petri dishes completely, right? And so it's not to knock them. It's just to have awareness of this is all they've known. You know what I mean? They've been taught this way since I let go of them, right? Like, so you learn to teach them that you know, the backbone, the backbone, never trade your wishbone for your backbone kind of thing, right? Like it's always on you, you know, that kind of thing. And so my girls are ferociously independent, which I'm really proud of. And if anything, like my son has been more interested in kind of, you know, learning these lessons and pulling things out of me and asking me for stories and stuff like that. So it's been interesting. It's been really cool era of parenting.
And it's interesting because just like your dad couldn't communicate this exactly to you, you can't communicate that. It's a totally different Petri dish. I love that metaphor.
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit. So I love that observation, how he was kind of dismissing the things that society was valuing. You know what I mean? Like he was like, yeah, it's even at Cornell, He had one conversation with him at Cornell because I went there and I screwed the pooch freshman first semester. Screwed the pooch, right? Discovered you could drink on Mondays. Discovered I could really work on my pool game all day, and came home with like a 1.7. And his only comment was, he was like, "You understand that I don't pay for this on a continual basis." You know what I mean? He's like, "I'm not paying for the 1.7. You can't bring this home." You know what I mean? This is like on the borderline of like failure. So I was like, all right, got it. And then proceeded. My grades got better every day, every semester, right through senior year from that moment on. So, I mean, it took a long way to climb it. By the time I got to my senior year, I made the dean's list. So I was kind of proud of that. And I'm not even a good student. But I took architecture, so I managed to get an A+ in that, and that really set myself up for a good semester.
Tony, if people want to find you, bug you on the internet, learn more, I think we got a lot of stories they're going to want to complement the rest of your work with. Where do you want to send them?
You can follow me on Twitter, at TG Macro. Just go and DM me there if you want to reach out. My website is tgmacro.com. You can submit a question through there if you have anything. That's where I have samples of my newsletter and the rundown of what my products are. And you can join tgmacro.substack.com is where you can sign up to get the Macro Dirt podcast that I publish with Jared Dillian every week now for 72 weeks running, and I'm incredibly proud of. He's a great teammate.
That's a beautiful thing. I love knowing about the people you picked up along the way. I love the product. If you haven't checked out Tony's work, the writing and everything else, I mean, now you heard the story. So now you have to read.
You pulled it out, man. Really grateful. That was really fun, Matthew. I didn't know we were going to get that deep. That was intense.
This is what we're here for. Tony Greer, you are truly an intentional investor. This is Epsilon Theory YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment, all the things below, and we are out. Special stop, timeout, flag on the play moment. When we're doing these, I don't have an outline, so it's not like the guest knows at all what they're getting themselves into when they come on this show. So we ran through all these stories, and Tony called me afterwards and said, I think I got two of these stories flipped up a little, and it was a silver story and a gold story, and I definitely threw the hand grenade on him, the live action hand grenade of, you learned really valuable lessons for this that I heard in one other interview you might have done 8 years ago. So let's get the record straight. We got a silver story and a gold story. Let's protect the characters and keep them innocent and honest.
Yeah. So the gold story is the one that happened to me in Zurich. That was one of my first lessons of learning how to really be able to provide liquidity managing a book, because I was kind of trading with my chest out and position trading while I was quoting customers. And I got into a situation where I got myself long gold, and I was kind of the best bid on the street, and gold was going up and it was working for a little while. And I had a positive P&L, and I was feeling very good about myself. And we got a call from the Swiss National Bank late in the day. I got some information from a guy on my desk that thought when the salesperson stood up for the quote, one of the guys on my desk said, I think he might be a buyer of gold. And so I quoted him a bid price versus where the market was at the time, and he sold me gold. And because I asked him because I was the best bid in town, he asked me for another price, and I low bid him way out of the way, and he passed on that, which let me know that he was seeing better bids away and hitting them. So now you can imagine, Matt, I'm getting longer as we're going up, and then I get sold gold at the high, and we go straight down. So now my positive P&L is gone, and gold is starting to plummet, and I haven't really figured out that I need to get out of all of it yet, right? Until all of a sudden it gaps down $5, and I all of a sudden have a negative 7-figure P&L.
And this is where you're like 27 or you're in your 20s still, right?
Yeah,
this is the
26,
job
27 years old. Yeah, deer in the headlights with a lot of experience trading, but at the same time, I'm at a big institution and there's a lot of hierarchy, and I thought I was going to get fired. So that was extremely stressful. Made it out of that situation alive with, I think that back then I learned that, if you're in the seat quoting gold as a dealer, an interbroker dealer who has to quote other banks, has to quote clients. You've got to be nimble in position and in timing, right? You can't have the biggest position on the board because then you can't provide liquidity for people, right? You can provide liquidity for people when you're flat and when you have small positions, right? You have a small position, somebody buys some gold for you, you can go buy it back quickly and be flat, probably get it back inside the bid offer spread if you're cagey about it, things like that. But if you're the risk taker, you can't be the price maker. Right. So that was a valuable lesson to learn back then. And so because, as somebody that is going to be in the markets with a position no matter what, going forward from there, I was a much better interbroker dealer after that experience. So that was the clarity of the one valuable experience that you were looking for, and started putting it together with another really intense experience that I had on the trading desk in another place at another time. And it was just getting caught short metal. And now I want to, I guess, frame it like these two stories, while they were extremely heavy and really serious stories, these were like 2 of 20 stories like that took place in this, 2-year time frame when I was trading gold at UBS and then Goldman Sachs, et cetera, et cetera. So in my nervousness of trying to get you the right answer, my brain started putting all this stuff together, and I told both stories somehow. And then I the light bulb that went off on my way home while I kind of took a breath was, wait a minute, that's not how that happened. I have to call Matt back. I have to fix this. So, do you want to hear the other one?
I want to hear the other one, and give me the offset. So this was after the gold experience.
Yeah.
By a couple of years?
One, not even. It's less than a year later, because this is, I got back from Zurich and joined UBS.
Okay.
Is essentially what I did. I got hired essentially while I was there, more or less. I had been back and forth a couple of times, but I basically came home from Zurich, gave my notice at UBS. I came home from Zurich in January, gave my notice at UBS, and was on the Goldman desk at March. This happened Easter weekend, right? So this is very shortly after the last experience. I'm now at Goldman Sachs, and we get paid for 5 million ounces of silver on Good Friday while the market is closing, with Phillip Brothers exercising calls above the market after the market closes. And that was a situation where I was, co-managing the book with another partner of mine on the desk, and we were shorter than we really it was utterly ridiculous. Like, we had a massive short position going home over a weekend. And the guy that I was on the desk with, when we kind of sorted it all out and figured out how much we were short and how much we were going to have to babysit over the weekend means you stress every moment about how much money you're going to lose on the opening on Sunday night.
You're not enjoying your Cadbury eggs.
No, you're not even sitting. No. There's nothing like that. Like, it is like you are literally, I couldn't even, and I had just joined the shop, so I couldn't even put down Easter dinner. Right. And so now we get to the Tokyo Open, and the stocks, and silver's even higher. We start buying it back, cover our short, and the whole thing was an absolute disaster. Interestingly enough, we wound up figuring out how to make money on the upside out of that trade over the next couple of weeks. But that was an experience where, when we figured out exactly how much we were short and what we were going to be measuring over the weekend, my partner went across the street to the bar and did 2 shots of Jack Daniels consecutively. And he had disappeared for a little while, and I'm like, where did he go? Where could he have gone, right? Maybe he went to a bathroom on another floor or something like that. I don't know where it was. And he came back, and I was like, where did you just go? He was like, I went to the bar. He's like, we have a long weekend ahead of us. I was like, yeah, we do, man. So that's how that went, and that was a fun experience to be a part of at a new shop where, you know that it's a wild, wild west type of experience, and then you get thrown into one when you just get there. And so it was a lot.
Do you remember thinking, going through that where you're like, these kinds of experiences are following me? This is just what it means to be trading in metals?
No, because Matt, it's like you pull these stories, like I say, out of a huge cauldron of successes and wins, to be honest with you, right? So it's a little bit like calling up, it's still like calling up a world championship season in sports and saying, oh man, you remember that game we got beat up 12-0, right? And the whole league counted us out or whatever, and we came back and we made the playoffs and we had a great run in the end. It's like one of those, because there were big success stories too. Don't get me wrong, like there were times when you like, you really buy into what you're doing and you see some traffic on the desk and you go with it and you like make a ton of money by the end of the week and you're like, boom, you know what I mean? And at the same time, it's always like one where you have a big, you have a huge win, a huge win, a huge win, and then you have one loss that equals all three of them. That's when you get extremely humbled. You're like, oh man, we had some big days, we were having a big month, and that's all gone. But that's part of, that's always been part of, reporting a P&L. It's like pushing a rock uphill. It's a really big job, and you should have a lot of respect. Not you should. I shouldn't say you should. I say I have a lot of respect for people that run those books at banks, right? It is literally pushing a rock uphill to report a good P&L at the end of every month, starting from zero, making it from nowhere, and figuring out how not to give a dime back, right? It's alchemy. It's the hardest thing to do in the world, The good part is that when you have a franchise, there's actually money in the book, right? If you're quoting a lot of clients all the time, you make money on spreads. There's a certain amount of ways that you can earn money in the book, et cetera, et cetera. Franchise value, things like that. So there's value to the book, but you got to learn how to squeeze all of that value out, plus your alpha, which allows you to keep your job. So I guess that's how I would reframe those situations, if that's fair, man. And thank you for letting me correct the record and get out of a little bit of a mental tailspin on that.
Well, listen, cheers to having enough stories in life worth telling that it's hard to keep them straight. I think that's a sign of a life worth being well lived, if you ask me.
That's true. That's true. I can't complain, man. I can't complain. And, all they do is like, it gets you to tighten up the ship.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
It makes you a better risk manager for the next one. The next time the salesman stands up, you say, oh, I know what this could potentially mean. Let's handle this a little bit more carefully and slowly and methodically, more like a manager and less like a gunslinger.
Well, here's the more managing, less gunslinging. Maybe I'll figure out how to apply that to podcasting someday. Maybe you will
too. That could be a song too, right?
It really could. It probably is.
Yeah. You and I can make a song out of that.
All right. We'll call up John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora and see if they can
love it.
Dead or alive that one out of us. All right, Tony, thanks for coming back and setting the record straight.
Thank you for letting me do that, Matthew. You're the absolute best.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you're watching The Intentional Investor so more people can find our show. You can follow Matt directly at cultishcreative.com or at cultishcreative on Twitter. For more great content at the intersection of investing and life, check out epsilontheory.com or at epsilontheory on Twitter.